Okay, hi, and welcome to the first video that I'm doing, which is covering the AQA Core Science GCSE course. That includes the Core Science and, of course, Unit 1 of the Biology course. Now, the first thing I want to speak to you about is diet, and exactly what makes a healthy and balanced diet. And so firstly, we need to realise that a healthy, balanced diet includes a variety of different foods, different nutrients which we can get from food and from what we drink. There are various different types of nutrients and we need them for different reasons. And therefore, even a food which you might know as being really healthy, such as something like pasta, for example. Pasta is very high in carbohydrates, but if we just eat pasta and we don't obtain our fats and our proteins and everything else from somewhere else, then we don't have a balanced diet. So a healthy diet is a balanced diet. And so let's take a look at what makes up a balanced diet. The first one is protein, or proteins. Now, proteins are extremely important. Basically, all the different biomolecules in your body are either made of proteins themselves or proteins help make them. So proteins are extremely important. They're found in every single cell in our body. They make up all the different structures in the cell, and therefore proteins are essential. So the proteins will help us build new cells, because remember, cells are made of them. So they help us build cells, they help us repair. So if you go to the gym or you do some exercise, maybe you play football or tennis, then you actually are going to tear some of your muscles. And what makes you fitter is the ability to repair that muscle and even reproduce new muscle. And so repair is governed really by the amount of protein you take in. Other nutrients are important, but protein is the main one there. And of course, if we can build new cells, that means that protein is essential for growth. So milk, when a baby needs a lot of milk, milk contains a lot of protein. Different meats and pulses, lentils, things like that, they all contain protein. And so your sources of protein will allow you to grow and repair. So your sources of protein are things like eggs, milk, meat, fish, and there are various others. Okay, so next we have fats. Now fats probably get a bad name because obviously if you hear the term someone being fat, that is considered to be really unhealthy. However, some fats are absolutely important and essential even for us to function properly. Now fats are very good at storing energy. So we can get a lot of energy from fats. They also provide insulation, and this allows us to regulate our body temperature in a way. And you've probably heard of things like omega-3 and omega-6. Now they are fat oils which are essential for us, for our cells, in order to function properly. And so our brain functions better when we have the right amount of these oils as well. And so bodily functions, which includes our cells functioning properly and communicating with each other effectively, that is all regulated by our essential fats. And I'm sure you can name lots of fatty foods, but the ones which are good for us will come from fish, they will come from oil, so vegetable oils, so veg oils, they'll come from nuts. Oils and fats found from these sources are good for us. If we have too many of them, then obviously they're not, but that all comes down to balancing our diet. So there are various different types of fat, but we do actually need some of these fats to function properly. Okay, so next we move on to carbohydrates. Carbohydrates. Okay, and you've probably heard of carbohydrates. We get carbohydrates mainly from things like pasta and bread and things like that, and that's because they are a good store of energy. They are our main source of energy, carbohydrates. Now sugars and other carbohydrates can also make up fats and proteins. So some of our fats and proteins incorporate carbohydrates in order to allow them to function properly. So they are essential in many proteins. And so if we're not eating carbohydrates and we're not providing those carbohydrates, then those proteins can't function properly either. So that's an interesting link between the two there. And many of our muscle contains carbohydrates, and this actually provides protection. What's actually happening is we are using it for energy, as I've said before, but if this muscle didn't incorporate the carbohydrates, when we exercise and we need to burn carbohydrates for energy, if we don't have those carbohydrates there, the muscle will start breaking down its own proteins. So effectively, the muscle starts eating itself. And so if you've seen adverts on the TV showing starving people from around the world, especially in Africa, you'll see that you can see their bones pretty much because they've got barely any muscle on them. That's because their body has entered starvation mode and there is no carbohydrate in order to provide energy. So they are burning their own muscles in order to provide energy. So really not a good scenario there at all. And importantly, we get carbohydrates from things like pasta, bread, and also sugars from fruit and other sources of sugar as well. They are all different types of carbohydrates. Okay, so they're the big three that you've heard of. We also need something called fibre. Now, fibre is almost like a carbohydrate that our body doesn't break down for energy. And this is very good because it provides us the grip, if you like, in order to digest properly. So it aids digestion. It allows things to be digested properly because the fibre itself is not being broken down. And so this helps us, obviously, with things like constipation. If your body isn't functioning properly and your digestive system is not working properly, one thing that may be happening is you may be deficient in fibre. And so increasing the amount of fibre could actually solve that problem. And most of the fibre that we get is from vegetables and fruit. So that's another reason why fruit and veg are very important. Okay, we're getting pretty cramped here. But another thing which you will have heard of is a vitamin. Vitamins. Now, vitamins basically are compounds that we need for our body to function normally. And these compounds are things that we cannot produce on our own. So we do actually need to eat them. And they are responsible for a large variety of things. But very common is they are good for the immune system. They help our immune system. They aid growth and they aid metabolism. Many others as well. There are loads of different types of vitamins, but these are just examples. And we get vitamins from all sorts of different places. Certain vitamins are found in citrus fruits, certain vitamins are found in vegetables, certain vitamins are found in different types of meat. And so a balanced diet helps to ensure that we are getting all the vitamins that we need. Now, we also need things called minerals. People often get vitamins and minerals confused, and for good reason, because minerals, very much in the same way, very much similar to vitamins, minerals are required for loads of different functions in the body. One of the main ones, though, is the nervous system. Minerals are absolutely essential for the nervous system to function properly. They also are important for things like our bones and teeth. So calcium, for example, is a mineral. And one distinguishing feature, I guess, between the two is a vitamin is organic and a mineral is inorganic. And so minerals, a lot of the time, are things like metal ions. We can't just produce those from nothing. You can find those in animals, plants, but also in things like rocks, just in the ground, because they are not living things. They are not made out of carbon, which is what organic means. But just remember, vitamin and minerals, they pretty much are involved in a lot of the functions of the body, but a vitamin is organic and a mineral is inorganic. Okay, and last but not least, we have water. And so I've saved that till last. Obviously, it's extremely important. We can survive for weeks even without food, but we won't survive really longer than 2-3 days if we decide not to drink any water. That's because our bodies are made up of around 80%, 85% water. Water is important because everything in the body will occur in water pretty much. So water is important for the environment of the body, and it pretty much regulates everything that we do. And so it's quite clear that we get water on its own, we just drink the water. We also do get water from things like veg and fruit, but the majority of it will come from drinking water as it is. Okay, so very important, you need to remember we need proteins, fats, carbohydrates, fibre, we need vitamins, we need minerals, and of course we also need water. Now you need to be able to remember the key functions of all of these things and at least one example of where we get each of them from. And so that was a lot of information. Feel free to rewind and pause the video as you like, but we're going to move on now and talk briefly about just how much do we need to eat. Okay, now something I want you to be aware of is known as our metabolic rate. Metabolic rate is how fast our reactions, so the reactions in our body, are occurring. There we go. Now, the metabolic rate is different for every person. Every individual will have a different metabolic rate. And this dictates how quickly we are burning energy. We can do various things to alter our metabolic rate. For example, exercise. If someone is very active, then they are going to be burning energy quicker than they are if they are just not active at all and they're lying in bed all day. So we can change our metabolic rate, but it's also inherited really. So some people naturally, I'm sure you've seen them, naturally, even though they can eat rubbish food all the time, they'll never put on any weight. And that's because their metabolic rate is actually really fast. And that's naturally. They could slow their metabolic rate down and they can speed it up. But naturally, some people have a faster metabolic rate than other people. Okay, so how does this relate to how much you've got to eat? Well, let's say that we had these two people here, and they're pretty similar in every way. They're pretty much the same size. Okay, both very happy with themselves at the moment. Now, the guy at the top, let's do this different colour. The guy at the top has a high metabolic rate. I'm just going to say MR, metabolic rate. The guy at the bottom has a low metabolic rate. Okay? Now, both these chaps are going to eat the same amount. So they eat a lot of food. Now this guy at the top has done a bit of exercise. He's got a very high metabolic rate and he's perfectly happy. Look at him. He's in great shape. How about the guy at the bottom? The guy at the bottom is eating exactly the same amount, but he's not doing any exercise and also his metabolic rate is low to begin with. Now, so the guy at the bottom has ended up, of course, putting on some weight. He's still happy. Why shouldn't he be? Because he's part of this science lesson. But this is clearly not as healthy as this. And the metabolic rate has dictated whether he's put on weight or whether this guy has stayed, obviously, in good shape. So your metabolic rate is how quickly you're burning your energy. You get your energy from food. And if you take in more energy than you can burn, then you are going to store the rest of that food as fat, like this guy down here. Whereas, if you are burning loads of energy. So you're taking in a lot in your food, but you're burning it because you're active, you're doing a lot of exercise, and also your metabolic rate might just be quite high. You're not going to put on that weight because you're not taking in more energy than you are burning. And therefore, you don't have any opportunity to store the energy as fat. And so there are various things which dictate how quickly you are burning energy. First of all is just your inheritance. So your inherited metabolic rate. If you genetically have a high metabolic rate, that is going to dictate how easily you can put on or lose weight. The next, of course, is activity level. Activity level. It's not just about doing sports and going to the gym and things like that, but just staying active, walking rather than taking the bus, walking around the house, running around the house rather than sitting on your desk for hours on end. These small changes make a big difference to how much activity you're doing. If you sit down for 5 hours straight, then of course you are not getting any exercise. If you are doing your work and after 45 minutes you get up and walk around for a bit, your body is staying much more active, and it does make a big difference. Okay, the next one I haven't mentioned is gender. So in general, males will burn energy quicker than females will, and so a man will need more food really than a woman will per day in order to maintain his weight. Whereas if the woman is pregnant and she has to support obviously a growing child, then the woman needs to take in more food so that she can provide energy to herself and to the child. So a pregnant woman is going to need more energy, but in general, men do need more energy than women do. And lastly, slightly less obvious, is the climate. If you live in a really hot country, you really don't need as much food as if you lived somewhere that was really cold. That's because a lot of the energy that you take in is used by your body in order to heat yourself up. Our body temperatures are maintained at around 37 degrees Celsius, and our body needs to use energy in order to keep it at this temperature. If the temperature outside is close to 37 degrees, then your body doesn't need to use much energy in order to keep it at 37. If outside the temperature is minus 10 degrees, then your body needs to work really hard to keep your body temperature at that 37 degree level. So the climate where you live also dictates how much energy your body is going to need to burn. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. That was just a quick coverage really of the different types of food and how we use our energy. If you do have any questions, then please do use the link below to send me an email or pop a comment in the comment box below, and I'll be sure to get back to you. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.